Imagine living in a world where there was no shower waiting behind a bathroom door, no bottle of body wash, no toilet paper, and no hot water on demand. Now imagine being told that cleanliness could determine whether you were allowed to enter a sacred place, join the community, or even come into contact with other people. That was part of life in the biblical world. But here's the part most people don't expect. People living thousands of years ago had surprisingly organized ways of dealing with dirt, sweat, bodily fluids, waste, disease, and ritual impurity. And some of the things they used to clean themselves were far stranger than modern soap. So how did people actually wash their bodies in biblical times? What did they use when there was no supermarket, no plumbing, and no modern bathroom? And why did something as simple as water become connected to religion, social identity, and even the presence of God? The answer begins with something ancient people valued far more carefully than we do today: water. In the ancient Near East, water was precious. People depended on springs, wells, cisterns, rivers, and reservoirs. Unlike today, nobody could simply turn on a tap and expect unlimited clean water. Water had to be collected, carried, stored, and used carefully. That meant full-body washing was possible, but it wasn't necessarily an everyday routine. Instead, people often focused on washing specific parts of the body, especially the hands, face, and feet. And the feet were particularly important. Think about the environment: dusty roads, sandals, animals moving through streets, long journeys on foot. Your feet could become filthy very quickly. That's why washing feet appears repeatedly in biblical stories. In Genesis, Abraham offers water to visitors so they can wash their feet after traveling. It was an act of hospitality, but it was also practical. But water wasn't the only cleaning resource. Ancient people could use materials such as ashes and alkaline substances to help with cleaning. Oils were also important. In a hot, dry environment, oil could help protect the skin from becoming excessively dry. But oil also had cultural significance. It could represent honor, hospitality, celebration, or status. So biblical references to oil shouldn't automatically be understood as modern perfume. It could serve both practical and symbolic purposes. But here's where ancient cleanliness becomes much more complicated. Being clean didn't always mean being physically free of dirt. A person could be physically clean and still be considered ritually impure. The book of Leviticus contains detailed rules concerning bodily fluids, childbirth, corpses, clothing, food, skin conditions, and contact with things considered unclean. To a modern reader, these rules can seem strange. Why would someone need purification after certain bodily experiences? Why would clothing need to be washed? Why would contact with a corpse require purification? Because ritual purity was not simply an ancient version of hygiene. It involved religious status, social boundaries, sacred space, and participation in communal worship. And that becomes especially clear when we look at water. During the later biblical and Second Temple periods, ritual immersion became an important practice. Archaeologists have discovered numerous stepped immersion pools, known as mikvaot, particularly around ancient Jerusalem. These weren't swimming pools. They were constructed for ritual purification. A person could descend into the water, immerse completely, and emerge again. The action represented more than physical cleaning. It could symbolize purification, renewal, and a transition from one state to another. But ancient communities had another major problem to solve: human waste. Imagine thousands of people living together without modern sewage systems. How do you protect drinking water? How do you stop waste from accumulating around homes and settlements? The biblical law in Deuteronomy 23 provides a direct solution. Israelites were instructed to designate an area outside the camp for relieving themselves, dig a hole, and cover the waste afterward. The principle was simple: keep human waste away from the living area. Cover it, and protect the community. They didn't understand bacteria or modern germ theory, but they could see the consequences of poor sanitation: bad smells, insects, contamination, and unhealthy surroundings. As settlements became cities, managing waste became even more important. Archaeological discoveries from ancient Israel and Judah show basic waste management arrangements, including simple toilets or latrine-like installations in some contexts. These weren't modern bathrooms. They were practical solutions to a basic problem. Where does waste go? And because water was precious, protecting water sources was extremely important. But there was another kind of contamination that carried enormous importance in biblical law: disease. Leviticus 13 and 14 describe procedures involving skin conditions, traditionally translated as leprosy. It covered a broader category of conditions, including some associated with clothing and buildings. The response was structured. A person showing certain signs could be examined by a priest. The condition could be observed over time. In some situations, the person was separated from others. Later, another examination could determine whether the person could return. This wasn't modern medicine. The priests weren't microbiologists, but the system recognized that unusual conditions could require separation and observation. It would be too simplistic to call this modern quarantine because the biblical system also had strong religious and social purposes. Still, separation could have practical consequences for the community. And then comes one of the strangest parts. Sometimes a person wasn't dirty at all. They were simply ritually impure. A woman after childbirth could undergo purification. Someone who touched a corpse could become ritually impure. Certain bodily discharges could require washing and waiting. Clothing could need washing. So cleanliness wasn't always about something visible. It could be an invisible status, and that status affected everyday life. Who could enter a sacred area? Who could participate in religious activities? Who needed to wait? Who needed to wash? Who needed to remain separate? Suddenly, washing wasn't just about removing sweat and dirt. It could affect someone's relationship with the community and with sacred space. This becomes especially interesting in the New Testament. In Mark 7, Jesus encounters a debate involving ritual hand washing before eating. A modern reader might assume this is simply about hygiene, but the issue was more complicated. It involved traditions surrounding ritual purity and religious practice. The deeper question was not simply whether dirty hands were unhealthy. It was what truly made a person spiritually impure. Jesus shifted the focus away from external ritual alone and toward what comes from within a person. And this helps explain some of his most striking actions. In Mark 1, Jesus touches a man described as having a serious skin condition. Under the purity system, contact with someone considered unclean could create ritual impurity. Yet instead of impurity spreading to Jesus, the story presents healing spreading to the man. A similar pattern appears in Mark 5, when a woman suffering from a long-term hemorrhage reaches out and touches Jesus' clothing. Instead of Jesus becoming ritually contaminated, she is presented as restored. The message is powerful. The expected direction was for impurity to move from the unclean person to the clean person. But these stories reverse that expectation. Purity doesn't retreat. It moves outward. And this gives biblical washing practices a much deeper meaning. The physical washing was real. The cleaning of clothing was real. Waste management was real. Water was essential. But behind these practices was a larger cultural idea. Purity represented order. Impurity represented disruption. And purification represented restoration. That's why the biblical world shouldn't simply be described as a place where people were dirty because they didn't have modern soap. They had systems. They collected water. They washed bodies and clothing. They cleaned hands and feet. They used oils and other materials. They controlled waste. They separated certain conditions. They inspected people, and they built immersion pools. Of course, ancient life was not as hygienic as modern life. There were no antibiotics, modern sewage systems, germ theory, refrigerators, or modern medicine. But cleanliness still mattered. It simply required far more effort. Water had to be carried. Waste had to be controlled. Clothes had to be washed. Bodies had to be cleaned. And purity had to be restored. So what did people in biblical times actually use to clean themselves? The answer isn't one mysterious ancient substance. It was a whole system. Water was the foundation. Natural cleaning materials could assist. Oil could protect the skin. Clothing was washed. Feet were regularly cleaned. Waste was separated and buried. And ritual immersion could mark a return to purity. But perhaps the biggest surprise is this. For people living in the biblical world, cleanliness wasn't only about removing dirt. It was about returning something to its proper place. Water became the physical symbol of that transition. And that's why the deeper question was never simply, how clean is your skin? It was, how do you become clean again? In the biblical worldview, that question reached far beyond the body. It reached into identity, community, worship, and the human heart. The ancient world may have lacked our showers, soaps, and plumbing, but it was not a world without cleanliness. It was a world deeply concerned with the boundary between clean and unclean, ordinary and sacred. And once you understand that, many familiar biblical passages begin to look completely different. Because sometimes, the most ordinary act of washing was never really just about washing. It was about becoming ready to enter the world again.